Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
This is Carl.
This is Sean.
And Red Shirt Isaac.
And welcome back to Romulans Bearing Gifts. This, I am told, is episode number 86. And we're back with new content, and not just new podcast material, but at least of time of recording, the newest live-action Star Trek available, I believe. So we're almost being current in a way. And what a great way to get back into Star Trek. We are going to talk about the television movie Section 31.
There's a customer hoping for a word with you.
Bring him. What are you doing in my space station?
I'm giving you a chance to get back in on the action on a galactic scale.
What a cute idea. The only way this works is if I know exactly what I'm dealing with.
We're facing a threat unlike anything Starfleet's ever seen.
Billions of lives are at stake. Gather your people. We're gonna need every one of them.
31 is a Black Ops division. Spy work.
It's just a place for people to bend the rules.
Starfleet is here to make sure no one commits murder.
Whatever you believed your mission was, is worse than you thought.
How do we stop it?
We work together and don't get dead.
I'll try my hardest.
You ready? Let's get messy.
You don't answer her questions directly, she will punch you in your face.
What?
You said that she was going to be doing the face punching!
I lied.
You have no idea what you've started.
This is going to be bad.
5, 4, 3,
hold your course.
2, 1.
We survive together.
I can't even remember how this came up for discussion. I mean, obviously it came out a couple months back, but what was it? There was some conversation about trying to do something a little bit different than what we've done on the podcast. And the other thing on the table was perhaps going to be next week's episode on the feed, possibly. But then this was bandied about, and I don't know what else to say unless anyone else remembers why we're doing this right now.
Because it's part of Star Trek, and this is a Star Trek podcast.
True, but this is the first Star Trek movie we've discussed on the feed.
Okay, well, congratulations, kid. You broke your cherry. I don't know what to tell you.
I just sorting it through my mind. And for longtime listeners of this podcast or related podcasts, yes, we did the Beam Me Up commentaries, but that was over on the Prognosis Negative feed some years ago. And so that's the only other Star Trek movie related things. But this is the first discussion on an actual movie. And perhaps there will be more if this one is successful. I'm making a meta joke about what was originally proposed to be a series, Section 31. Does anyone remember what year they first announced and teased that?
I don't remember. It's been a while.
2016.
It was mentioned offhandedly after season 1 of Discovery ended, but no like official statement or anything like that. But I think the first official announcement that they were going to begin working on it was 2019, I believe. And then they were going to start working on filming. But what was the project that Michelle Yeoh? Oh, she had to show up to shoot Shang-Chi for the Marvel Universe. So that delayed the beginning of filming of this. And then something else happened in 2019, but I can't remember what that was. Are you okay, Carl?
No, I was just helping with the 2019.
I know. Do you need a mask?
Yes.
So something else happened in 2019, and then they finally, I think, began working on it for real, circa 21 or 22. And here we are, all these years later. Something else interesting to note is that way back when they were talking about it pre-COVID, the showrunners for the proposed Section 31 were supposed to be showrunners / show creators were supposed to be the creative team behind Strange New Worlds. But due to the pause in production, those gents got moved over to actually make Strange New Worlds. So they had to find someone else for this. So, just one of those things. Raise your hand if you'd really like to speak next about Section 31.
Well, like this, no one even flinched. No hands, no motion. All right, fine.
I did hover over the mouse pad for like a hot second, but
Okay. All right. Well, all right. I don't know who was bandying because I don't recall being consulted on this as being an option. I thought that we had dodged a bullet because you hadn't asked me to do Section 31. We've been doing all kinds of historical trek and all kinds of things in the past. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe, he's not going to ask me to do Section 31. He's just, he recognizes it for what it is, and we're going to move on. We're going to talk about other trek and other things and stay with the classics and whatnot. So when you excitedly contacted me about doing Section 31, I don't know where the bandying occurred. I was not part of that, but I was not entirely enthusiastic about doing Section 31.
why? Was there a reputation that preceded it?
Well, before Carl answers, I just want to say also from my perspective, when I first threw this out to Carl, I had not seen it yet at all. I had heard some of the buzz out there, but I had not seen it myself. And then the way Carl responded initially, I honestly couldn't tell if he liked it or disliked it. It was ambiguous to me. And that made me curious. And Carl, that's what made me want to hound you further to try. Because I was uncertain. I couldn't tell.
Mm-hmm. I think I said something like, well, there are other things that we could do. I mean, subtle hints like that perhaps we could go in another direction, but we've barreled ahead. We have.
I want to hear the answer to Sean's question just now.
Why didn't? Well, first of all, surprisingly, before it came out, there was some positive buzz about it. I mean, Michelle Yeoh has been a very strong part of the new Trek Discovery universe. Her character is really one of the more interesting ones from Discovery. So that's why early on, the idea of her getting a spinoff series or whatnot was strongly supported because it made sense. She really was an interesting, rich, strong character. And
wait, can I ask a question right quick?
Mm-hmm.
In Discovery, in what phase is her character in Section 31? Is it like after, well, obviously after she's killed her family and all that, but is it after the events that take place in Section 31 or before them? Or even during them?
That is a darn tricky question to answer, right? Everybody at home knows why. Let's just say that there is a temporal component to what we are seeing now that makes that a challenging question. The easiest answer I will say is relative to Giorgio, this is after Discovery.
Yes, that's the approved answer.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think I understand what you mean. Okay.
Yes, the Time Agency approves of that answer.
Thank you. That's why I'm doing my best. I'm working hard, folks. I'm working hard.
Some Rory and Amy Pond shit going on, I think.
Yeah, so in her character's mind, the Michelle Yeoh character, the stuff on Discovery happened in her past.
Yes.
So this is the most up-to-date in her life that we've ever seen.
That's right. So, that being said, she really was early on one of the most interesting characters from Discovery. And then the idea of what Section 31 was additionally interesting. Early in the history of Discovery and whatnot, we find out more about them. I mean, they are actually a part of Trek before Discovery, but we see more of Section 31 really in Discovery than we ever had before, and in some ways it left some viewers wanting to know more about it. So the way, I mean, again, I'm not going to give away too much, but the way that Giorgio leaves the Discovery timeline world and her association with Section 31 was a really strong setup for the potential of a new series, or, what we thought was going to be a new series that eventually got contracted into this movie. So everything was well set up for this to be an interesting possibility. So your first question, I think, was, was there some initial buzz that, had tainted me or had gotten me concerned about this? Although we had been waiting for years, everything was set up for this to be a successful exploration. So, with that expectation, we settled into watching Section 31. I don't know, people. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know. Well, okay, I'll tell you what. Because I had to get an answer to some of this foolishness. This is the only frame that I got that made a flake of sense. This is it's just a small piece. It's a corner of the frame, if you will. Their motivation was, what if we imagine mixing Star Trek and Mission Impossible? Okay, now that's not a joke. That was actually part of their thinking in terms of where they wanted to go with this show movie. We're going to mix Mission Impossible with Star Trek. Now, there's really only one time in Star Trek history where I think that blend would have made sense. And that was, of course, back with original Star Trek. There was a vibe and an era convergence between the lighting, the colors, the 60s, and what Star Trek and Mission Impossible was, so much so that, Doctor Who fans know there's that episode where there's almost like a Doctor Who / like James Bondy kind of character in Star Trek. And even back then, there was the potential for a spinoff for this kind of thing. The only time I think Spy, Mission Impossible, and Trek would have made sense was carrying that era of the 60s and that vibe from back then. Beyond that, it never made sense to me to go back. They tried to go back in Picard, in second season Picard, and do that. It didn't make sense then. Star Trek and Mission Impossible to me is like toothpaste and orange juice. It's why for that to have been the corner of their eye. Like, yeah, let's go. Let's start with that already. If I had known, I would have been like, oh no, 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 no. And with that in mind, when you see some of the decisions that they made and you see what they're doing, it really was like they tried to join Star Trek and Mission Impossible. Is that a good idea? Should they have done that? I don't think so. But that puts a frame, a bit of a shape on what this is that we saw with Section 31. So that is my start. I got plenty to say, but that's my start.
I wonder because Kurtzman cites Mission Impossible and Killing Eve as something that influenced them.
This ain't no Killing Eve. No way.
I haven't seen Killing Eve. I'm obviously aware of it, but I haven't seen it. So they cite those examples, and then I was thinking about what Carl was saying because it's obvious they're going for that. But season 1 of the Picard series, it wasn't Mission Impossible, or I should say, throughout the Picard series, there's elements where it almost feels a little bit like this premise of having like a ragtag squad doing things out of the norm that we normally see in Star Trek, kind of doing heists and things of that nature, espionage. So did they just have that on the brain at the time, or what? Like, were they set on going down that road, I wonder, because you have this and you have some of those elements from the Picard series?
Well, the closest they got really to the spy, okay, because I agree with you, ragtag undisciplined crew was season 1 and 2 of Picard. So, that aspect of it, yes, I can see. But they really only did the spy Mission Impossible thing with, Picard's alternate girl in season 2. So I guess Kurtzman just really does like this idea of, raggedy underdogs. But, I'm just going to say raggedy underdogs have been done before. And if you're going to do it, you got to do something really novel. Because, look, raggedy underdogs happen all the time. But it is rare when you get the chemistry right to make it novel. Because Firefly is raggedy underdogs. But that was just a really novel team. They were very raggedy. And there was a dynamic among them that made the banter interesting.
Yeah, definitely. They felt like certain characters felt like an established family from episode 1.
Right.
This no family right here.
So, if you're gonna use a traditional trope like underdogs that have to work together against difficult backgrounds, the personal backgrounds to try to excel as heroes. Okay, we've seen that before. We really have seen that before. So what are you bringing that is novel? It can be story wise. It could be emotional connection to the characters, but it's got to be something novel. And I did not feel the novelty with this group of characters. So.
Now I'm going to shift over to Isaac now. Isaac, obviously respond to anything you've heard, but also, how do you feel now that you are roped into this? Obviously, you didn't sign up for this ever with podcasting or on Star Trek. And I'm guessing you probably didn't know any of the background information. So just going into it, I'm curious what your experience was like being forced to watch this.
All right, to answer your first question, are we not going to bring up the elephant in the room?
Which one?
Bring it up. I think there's like a whole circus of elements.
Kurtzman, obviously Orsi's not involved, and a certain director all made this one movie called Mission Impossible 3.
Oh,
Right.
And then the three of them also went and I think made these two movies called Star Trek in 2009 and Star Trek Into Darkness.
Oh.
Yeah, and Abrams really gained his popularity in the industry with Alias, which was like his breakout show, which was very much sort of like a Mission Impossible circa early mid 2000s.
I remember that. Yeah.
I forgot they did the Mission Impossible 3. What in the world?
Yeah, I forgot about Mission Impossible 3 myself.
What in the world?
Oh, and they're after the rabbit's foot. That would have been a funny. Now that Kurtzman, if you had done that would be a deep pull, and it's Paramount property as well, so you wouldn't have been stealing from anybody else outside.
Who was the big bad boss in Mission Impossible 3? Was it Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Mr. Philip Seymour Hoffman.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think he was like the Bond villain in that movie.
I must admit, I have enjoyed those Mission Impossible pictures quite a lot, even though I'm not a fan of Tom Cruise.
2's the best.
I like him.
Yeah.
I like him too.
I like him also, but I think 3 was the one where people felt like, I don't know about this anymore. And then I think part 4, which was not Abrams, sort of like reset the interest in general. Not that I'm a big Mission Impossible Tom Cruise fan, but that's just the way I kind of remember things.
Now, to your second question, being hooked into this, I caught on to one of them hooks. I was at the bottom of the ocean minding my own business, and there's a hook, a dastardly hook. And as Mr. Krabs once said, I should not go near the hooks or else. In this case, yes, I was roped in and was watching the film. And I had very, very, very low expectations coming into this. I did indeed. Maybe because of Caleb over the years, he has made me a fan of the guys over at Red Letter Media. And I watched their review of this. I had heard some, not the best of reviews of this picture, if you want to call it that. Speaking of which, is this like the first Star Trek television movie?
Yes is the quick answer.
Yeah, that's quick. Yeah.
I feel as though there's an asterisk in there somewhere, but
yeah,
let's move away from that.
A little bit.
So I had very low expectations going into this picture here, and watched it and thought, all right, it's like, a very overly expensive B movie from the 80s, I suppose, that the guys at Red Letter Media would do for the best of the worst or anything like that. It's as the ragtag crew, as you guys were saying. Of course, I think the big pictures and the big names that people would think of in the last 10 years are, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy, The Suicide Squad, and
all the Ocean's movies.
Mm-hmm. You could call it that as well. Except those guys all get along with each other, I think.
Yeah.
Looking at this, I just thought of it as very, when it comes down to it, inoffensive. Yeah, I almost have to agree with Carl. It does seem honestly like a Mission Impossible movie. Would have been funny if they, not only that, if they had gone back to the war ties, almost the Cold War ties with it. Something more along the lines of Get Smart, potentially. That'd be funny. But no, in this, it literally just does feel like a direct-to-video, almost in a way, 80s B movie that, this big MacGuffin is we're going to blow up something. I don't know. It's a whole legion of Star Destroyers that have Death Star technology. Wait, wrong franchise. And a series of escalating conflicts. I'm not really too sure. And there's a story in there between, that's a rule of two almost in a way, where the two are one, which... Anyway.
By the way, that Star Wars reference you just made, that was Abrams too, by the way, but go on.
Well, he caught me there red-handed.
I'm feeling a nerd fight coming on. Everybody, let me get the spray bottle out.
I'm not saying there's a theme, but it's interesting.
It would have been funny if he had just come back to hey, Abrams, you did so well with 09 and Into Darkness. Would you mind directing this TV movie? What? I don't even know what he's doing recently. Anyway, I will pass the baton over to Sean for my initial thoughts. Sean, your initial thoughts over this property, or at least this project that you were asked nicely to watch.
Very good. Thank you, my friend Isaac. What did I think of Section 31?
I love how Sean was using his 1931 voice as a tie-in to the current season of the Best Picture podcast.
As opposed to Section 32.
Oh, I was going to bring that up. Coincidentally, this is Section 31, and we're also on season 1931 on the other pod.
Oh, yeah, that's right. 31, 32. Okay. Trying to drop things in there to...
Well, you're the one who said it. Well, thank you,
to promote other podcasts.
Well, I see. The 21 Skidoo.
Well, okay. So I used to do this podcast, speaking of talking about other podcasts, but I did it with my friend Steve. It was called Shit We Watch on Netflix. And what we did is one episode, I would pick a horror movie from Netflix for us to watch, and Steve would pick a sci-fi movie. Okay. I really loved that format. But I realized that there weren't a lot of really good horror movies on Netflix at the time. So I started like going off the format. But Steve, he wanted to follow the rules. He would only we only watch stuff that was on Netflix. Okay. And as a result, we saw some of the shittiest sci-fi movies I have ever seen in my life. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I wish I was on that podcast. I'm so jealous.
There are some gems. I know some of those you're talking
Yeah. And like Jupiter Ascending. What the?
Whoa.
I want my 2 hours back.
about. Yeah, that's
Yeah. So this is nothing like those bad movies. It's fine. And one reason I didn't like it is, well, I'm sorry. One thing about it that I didn't like was the Michelle Yeoh character. I felt that it wasn't really explored well. You know, she kills off her family of, you know, including a little boy. And then she, you know, burns her ex-boyfriend. And then boom, by the end of the movie, she's, you know, reformed. I'm like, I don't think so. She's fucking evil. She's evil. She's bad. I know she did it like it was kind of self-defense. But when you guys are talking about her involvement in Discovery, I'm thinking that there are other reasons there that I'm not aware of. So as a new viewer with no notion that this is a repeat character, I felt kind of burned. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
However, there were a couple scenes that I really enjoyed. One of them was the action sequence on, I don't know what you call that fucking thing, the platform that's shooting through the tubes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was great. I love the mention of nanites. Who was the, I don't even remember the character's name. The guy that turned out to be basically the traitor. The Scottish Vulcan.
Was his name Fuzz?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that was a new species. I had to look that up because I wasn't sure if they had ever existed in the Star Trek universe before or been mentioned. But no, this is the first mention of his species.
Wait, what is the species?
Oh, gosh.
I just call them the interspace species. I don't know.
I thought he... I thought...
That's funny.
I'm sorry, I call mine the Fantastic Journey species. No.
It's going to be hot right now because that's my favorite subgenre. But they're called nanokin.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so nanites, I know about nanokin. All right, interesting. I kind of didn't like that. I thought that was a little too cutesy. Like, oh, I'm saying the names of my 199,000 kids. I think those characters were so overbroad. Like, oh, I get it. We've got the jock. We've got the pretty lady. We've got the lady who I think might be the traitor, but it turns out she's actually good. And we've got the goofy guy who turns out, of course, to be the traitor. And these are all they're like archetypes, you know, and I shiver, and they were fine for the time that they were on screen and the time that I spent with them, but I shiver to think what they could possibly be like in a series. you've got to do a lot of fleshing out, because the nanokin thing I thought was fucking absurd. I kind of like the actor that was playing him, but just the, yeah. And when he comes on at the end of the movie, when he comes in and he's a different guy now with a Southern accent, but it's the same actor, I'm like, aha, I see a future episode here. I see what they're doing, and they're trying to make a series out of this. And I didn't know that was really the case, because it did feel very much like the pilot of a series.
Yeah, well, I suspect that's what they were going for, that the movie was going to. Everyone was going to be so excited about it that this was going to greenlight the series.
Yeah. And I don't know how much you can trust like the secondhand reports about things behind the scenes, but from reading some of those today, the way they made it sound, because I guess if those reports are to be believed, this all started and happened because Michelle Yeoh loved playing the character who she played in season 1 of Discovery. And supposedly she's the one who mentioned it first to Kurtzman. And then, that sort of slowly got the ball rolling in other people's heads. And supposedly, because she just supposedly loved this character on paper from the time she started playing it, and had expressed that she would love to continue playing this character because she liked this idea of like a strong Asian female in a sci-fi franchise, and she just enjoyed being this character. And just before this came out, supposedly she also said, hey, if the first one does great, I am happy to come back and do more. So in my head, I imagine it as sort of being like when Benedict Cumberbatch, yes, he had like this whole film career, but he would still go back to do like these little Sherlocks every now and then. Mm-hmm. So that's just sort of the way I see this, or how it could have played out if it was well received. Now, the fact that it was initially supposed to be a series, and then, they made an announcement like it's going to be an event, one-off thing, sort of like hinting that maybe if this does well, not only might we do more Section 31, but other one-off Star Trek things. That being said, I was surprised that they still made it feel so much like a pilot episode. I would have thought that in post, they would have edited it to make it feel like a standalone movie, whether they wanted to make more or not. Because the fact that it really ends like a pilot,
yeah,
it felt like a weird choice to leave that in to me. And it's funny. I mean, if you're a Doctor Who fan from back in the day, it made this feel like the Doctor Who TV movie to me from '96.
That's a really good comparison. That's absolutely true. Yes.
Yeah, and not only because it was meant to be like a pilot but turned into a standalone movie, but also because even if you were a Doctor Who fan, and even if you liked it then or liked it later in retrospect, while it was Doctor Who, it definitely felt different from all other Doctor Who. And that's another thing that about this, like, yeah, okay, there's elements of new Star Trek in here, but then it's its own thing. So yeah, this felt like the Doctor Who TV movie moment for Star Trek to me.
Interesting.
But I actually have plenty more to say about this. Real quick on the nanokin. Everyone who's listened to me podcast over the years knows that things that are on a different scale, especially a micro scale, I am a moth to a flame with that type of content in anything. So I actually got excited, even though it feels weird, and even though I agree with everything Sean said about that premise, I secretly got excited inside of thinking of the possibilities. And it made sense to me that in this wide world of Star Trek in the galaxy, that, yeah, there should be some type of species on another scale, like maybe even like those little guys in Willow or something. By the way, that's like the only thing I liked about the new Willow series was that there was some of those little guys, and we get to see their little village. Again, maybe this is because Smurfs got me into this since I was a little kid. I don't know.
The nanokin thing, I think didn't they do it in one of the Men in Black movies?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the next thing I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Thanks for reading my lines in the script. But because while I like the concept, the execution felt very Men in Black, and that is like I would love to see the concept, but done in the seriousness of tone that we're used to in like TNG Trek or something like that, like less tongue in cheek. I would love to see the concept explored in that way, but here we are. Anyway,
there was one thing that threw me off in this too, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, and I can't believe it bothered me, but it really took me out. The swearing, Paul, the use of of shit, bullshit.
Yep, I agree.
You know, I can say those words no problem on a podcast, all that, but there's something about swear words that it's like they don't exist in the Star Trek universe.
Yep.
You know? I think that the writers have been, well, they don't have any choice. First of all, I think maybe they get away with some of this later stuff, which they have here, but it just, you know, every time I heard, it was mostly shit, people saying shit. And every time they said it, it was like, hey, wait a minute, you can't say that in Star Trek. That doesn't exist. And it's kind of absurd to think that, but somehow in my mind, it has been programmed that way. And I'm not a huge Trekkie or Trekker or whatever.
I agree. I was going to bring that up. And it's a combination of like two things. The tradition of Star Trek is supposed to be, you know, the best in the arc of humanity. And so we are supposed to move beyond that kind of thing. So on one hand, you really don't hear that until super, super new Trek, where that's the case. But the other thing is, whenever they do it, it is demonstrative. Like they're just trying to show you they're bad. It doesn't even like flow, right? You know, if you're gonna cuss, you gotta do it right. You gotta have it's gotta fit with the emotion of the moment. It's gotta have a poetic flair to it. It's gotta fit in the frame. That is not what was going on. So yeah, it took me out too. Well, that and they were using Earth human phrases a lot. They're gonna go after her like a dog with a bone. Okay. Why in a universe of aliens would you say, they would at least, in old Trek, they would, like slide a targ in there or something just to make it more universal, so it didn't sound so pedestrian. No, they routinely would use slang and shorthand words from the contemporary era, and there was a lot of that just kept taking us out of what was supposed to be, Trek.
But there were sprouts, there were little groundlings, little seeds of good ideas here. Like, I don't remember the character's name. I didn't write them down. But the character who ends up getting killed,
a lot of them do.
The Delton? The bald woman?
Yes.
Oh, the Delton. Yes, Mom.
I'm like, okay, I want to see more of her. Like, I want to see.
We all wanted to see more of the Delton. That's the only thing I was looking forward to. She's back from the original, from the motion picture. So we really don't.
Not the character, the race.
Yes, the race, right? We don't get to see much of Deltons at all, and they have a historical intrigue in the world of Star Trek. Okay. And this is the first time they bring them back, and this is what we get. So yeah, unnecessary Mal was.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, like inside baseball, like from Star Trek behind the scenes, the concept of the Delton race kind of got transmogrified into the
Betazoids.
Yeah, I couldn't think what they were called. Mm-hmm. The Betazoids, Deanna Troy's race. That's sort of how they. Yeah, got changed in a way. So
yeah, but the Deltons were hotter.
Oh yeah, well, okay, no shade on Marina Sirtis, but
right, no, I'm not making a judgment about the appearance of the women.
Yeah, but I know what you're saying.
Historically, the characteristics of the Deltons have a stronger sexual component to them than what the Betazoids were.
Yes, you're right. And, perhaps we'll discuss Persis Kambata sometime in the future on this podcast. But hold on, real quick on cussing, because I only have 5 things to say about that. No, not really 5. But so on the one hand, you're absolutely right. In the normal Trek universe, that's rare. Although I keep thinking of Data saying it in the Next Generation movie, but I'm trying to not get distracted by that. And another curious thing I believe Kurtzman had said early on about, or not necessarily early on, but about this first episode, he said that, the setting for this story, this one-off, was in the Star Trek universe equivalent of like the Badlands, or he compared it directly to the world of Unforgiven, the 1992 Gene Hackman movie. He was sort of saying that the setting for this story, because they are outside of Federation space. So on the one hand, you can say, okay, so things would be very not Federation in this Badlands Westworld situation. And then the headcanon part of my nerd brain is saying, yeah, everything sounds really colloquial because for some reason the universal translator is set to contemporary times. And so we're just hearing everything through a prism that we understand.
How come these universal translators weren't doing that to any of the other series then?
You're right. They were busted in the previous ones. But because you're right, if we take these as canonical televiewings of real events in the Star Trek universe, yes, it makes no sense at all. But maybe this headcanon was born out of me watching the Discovery series proper. Maybe this was like a self-defense mechanism. Like this part of my brain grew. And so now it's just part of programming. I don't know. But anyway, was someone going to go on a different tangent after that?
Yeah.
Well, if I can just quickly add to what Eric said, it did bother me. Only with the line with the nanokin where he went, microbes or microorganisms were able to survive against the dinosaurs with the meteorites or the ice age. And that also bugged me because I'm like, wait, so you're saying that like dinosaurs have existed like universally on every planet, or are you just like
master of Earth history?
Exactly. Or you're specifying like Earth history instead of the general. And that's ultimately the limitations itself, even as I've explored these ideas as well in other series potentially of, yeah, when it comes down to it, like you almost need an AI to generate a wholly new species that has different rules to it, because we are just way too, and I'm not saying it in a selfish way, but just like we are way too used to like Earth ethics and or just the way Earth works. So with us, we really don't understand how another species would operate.
Now, to be fair, even though I don't necessarily disagree with any of you guys are saying on this subject, at least it takes place in the Terran universe, or supposedly, their history at some point lines up with our current times or history. Where this phenomenon bothers me much more, I think, is when I'm watching something like a Disney Star Wars series. And there are little moments in some of those series where they will just say like the most earthly thing.
Yeah, no, that's unacceptable.
So imagine if they made that comment about the dinosaurs, but it's in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't work.
Every once in a while, that's when I start going, whoa, what's happening? Like, why are they talking about very earthly things or using very earthly expressions?
Yeah.
Please, more boss nass.
So yeah, that here you guys are right, but it doesn't get under my skin. But it does in Star Wars or other things that supposedly take place in a different galaxy, because that's the weirdest phenomenon to me.
Yeah, that's terrible. And but again, my only counter to that is we've been watching Star Trek for 60 some years here, and they've managed to keep it in universe up until now. for them to flake out like this now is problematic.
Yeah. Well, I like how anyway, one day we'll talk about Star Trek 6 because I love the way the Klingons in that movie, what's the word? What's that word when you supposedly steal from other cultures?
Appropriate?
Yeah, I love the way they appropriated old
Shakespeare.
Earth literature throughout that movie. A lot of Shakespeare.
Oh,
for sure.
that's the one with Christopher Lloyd as the Klingon.
No. You were thinking about David Warner.
No, Christopher Plummer. I'm so sorry. Christopher.
Yes, Plummer.
They both played Klingons, but
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, Plummer.
The Plummer was the one with the steel eye patch, right?
David Warner had the quotes. Mm-hmm.
And of course Khan did it, but then he was a 20th century man. So anyway.
21st century schizoid man. Eric, I have a question.
Oh, please. I have answers all day.
So at the very end, when Jamie Lee Curtis shows up, is she a Borg or does she just have cybernetic implants?
I don't even know what to say because
spoilers.
I have nothing obviously against Jamie Lee Curtis or anything, but at that point when she popped on, again, if this was going to be like an actual pilot to multiple episodes, by all means, but to have her just pop in like she's going to be Charlie. Going forward, that's Charlie's Angels. That was weird to still include it as if it was like a tease. It felt very spoilers for Solo, a Star Wars movie. Thank you, Alexa. But spoilers for Solo, a Star Wars movie. But it felt like Darth Maul just popping in at the end of that movie. And I was excited when that happened in the Star Wars movie.
Yeah, okay. I knew it was her in the very beginning. That was her voiceover.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even...
You didn't recognize her voice?
Yeah, I heard her voice.
I think I wasn't paying full attention at the very beginning.
I actually like Jamie Lee Curtis. I've liked a lot of the stuff that she's been in. So I'm a bit of a fan of hers. But this didn't seem to fit. For many, many reasons, it didn't seem to fit. Her as Control, that gets complicated for a lot of different reasons. All right, let me come back to this. Does anybody else have anything else they wanted to say?
I will add that if you remember, Jamie Lee Curtis and Michelle Yeoh both won Oscars for the same movie. Mm-hmm. Everything. So that may have something to do with it. Maybe, maybe
I forgot about that.
Yep. Yeah, they're buddies. They're good friends. Yeah. So, if Michelle Yeoh is going to have a series, she'd probably call up her buddy. And that I strongly suspect that's what happened here.
Oh, okay, now it makes much more sense. I completely forgot about
We need to have Ke Huy Quan in it now.
Heck yeah.
I said his name wrong.
Yeah, no, that would be good. That'd be good.
He was in White Lotus. Yeah.
Oh, he could be the other Data.
Oh my God! What if the two Datas meet? I must say Data. Datas meet.
Yeah,
Charles getting on his Kurtzman phone now.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That I would watch. All right, so let's see if I can do this without too many spoilers. I think another thing that I found kind of distressing about this is the idea of Section 31 is explored very darkly in Discovery. We get the idea that they're sort of not just like the black ops of Starfleet, but they're like the team that does the things that Starfleet can't officially do. And so they've got a very dark edge. And we explore Section 31 for almost an entire season of Discovery. A dark force takes over, commandeers Section 31 and a bit of Starfleet in a very significant way. And in Discovery, that darkness is not entirely resolved. So they leave us with this big dark baddie that is associated with Section 31, that's associated with Control, with all of that stuff. And in Discovery, they never really go back to it. Now, that plus, there is an episode toward the end of Discovery where Giorgio, Michelle Yeoh, in air quotes, leaves the series. And her departure it's a big deal. Like, what happens in the story that allows her to leave the space, time, and everything that Discovery is in? Her departure is a big, big deal. And the characters and the setup for how she is allowed to leave, and she even has a little redemption story all wrapped into this moment where she leaves the space-time and the series of Discovery, presumably to go on to become part of Section 31, or at least to have that opportunity. There are two big buildups between Control, Section 31, and the departure of Giorgio that have these really big backstories, and they're important in the series of Discovery. And when we pick up Section 31, the lightness of it, I mean, the light emotional playfulness of what we see with Section 30 of the movie, Section 31, completely ignores this massive dark backstory that is intersecting with three different storylines with her. And we don't, other than the fact that we know that we see flashbacks of her life when she was in her universe, they don't really touch on any of that. So again, the buildup, there was a lot of potential for what Section 31, the movie or series, was supposed to be about. They'd set up all of this stuff in the world of Discovery. And so if you actually had watched Discovery and had gotten some connection with Giorgio as a character, and then watched this, you're still left feeling, what happened to this? Well, where was this? What happened about that? None of that is resolved in this. So that's additionally frustrating with what's going on here. It's like they traded off some very powerful potential for this kind of a slapsticky kind of romp. And you're just wondering what's happening here. Why abandon all of that? Well, especially if it was going to be a series, why get rid of all of that?
Yeah, so hold on. I only got 10 things to say about this.
Oh boy.
Oh, by the way, buried hidden in my response to you is the answer to why she looks kind of Borgy. So I could tell you, but then I give away a whole bunch of stuff. But there's a connection. That was why I answered that. So that was actually an answer to your question.
Thanks.
I can't remember my first response out of 10, but I will say that, yeah, again, I'm surprised they still left this the way it was. Oh, I remember what point one was. So as people can gather, those who are here on the panel, or people just out there who are listeners who maybe never watched Discovery or did and didn't like it and therefore didn't want to watch this. What's very unfortunate about this movie is that obviously it doesn't cater to traditional longtime fans of Star Trek. That's sort of a given. But even those who were big fans of Discovery in particular, for the reasons Carl just mentioned, it was not satisfying for them either. Even though if you're familiar with Discovery, you get the same type of production feel. It definitely feels like from the producers of Discovery, it feels like that type of production. But unfortunately, it didn't satisfy the non-Discovery fans or the Discovery fans. So that's like a double negative whammy. But furthermore, what Carl was talking about, very expertly and delicately avoiding major spoilers for the Star Trek universe. For those who are up to date with MCU happenings, kind of what Carl was describing with Michelle Yeoh's character is kind of, in a way, that almost sounds like a description of Loki's character in the MCU. For those who that makes sense to.
Yes.
There's that. And then if MCU's not your bag, like Sean here, I could put it in Doctor Who terms for you. It's like how in the newer series of Doctor Who, there was a character, Captain Jack, who got established in the main show. And then that character and actor, John Barrowman, had a spin-off series. And it was kind of the same setup, what Carl was just talking about. Like, all these questions were raised in the main series. So you hear there's going to be a spin-off just on this one character. And as a fan at the time, you're like, okay, now we can start to get answers, to these questions. But right from the very beginning of that spin-off series, they act as if, what questions? What are you talking about? And it like, you're like, what is happening? They're not addressing anything that I want to know. But see, they already knew they had a whole season at least in the bag. So they saved it. They didn't talk about any of the questions until they gave you a hint at the end of at the finale of the first season of that spinoff. And so you had to wait even longer to finally get, but at least you eventually got the answers you wanted. So that's why it also feels weird because this is only sort of the first pilot. I see what they're doing. They want to hook in those Discovery fans and be like, dang it, we didn't get what we wanted. Let's keep going. Except that's not going to happen ever, presumably.
Yeah.
So that's the dilemma here.
Yeah. They should have read the room, because longtime fans of Discovery have been through some things. And if they were going to try to spin off a series and attract those fans from Discovery, throw us a bone. Give us something that connects us or resonates us with the parts of Discovery that we enjoyed. There was a lot about Georgiou I really, really liked. And to have this movie about her and have basically none of the stuff that made her so strong and interesting and exciting in Discovery in her whole movie is disappointing.
And by the way, I agree with Carl. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Discovery, yeah, Georgiou's absolutely one of, and maybe the only really interesting character in that show. But yeah. Wow, we're deep into this, and we've been dancing around the sombrero, as I used to say in high school.
Yeah, right. Go ahead.
So let's talk about some happenings in the story. Did anyone appreciate? I guess I've never seen an Ocean's 11 movie, but did anyone appreciate the Ocean's 11-esque introduction in the sort of casino ballroom in this? It's sort of like a Deep Space Nine with a warp engine, except it's for it's like if the Tatooine Cantina was as big as Deep Space Nine and could travel in hyperspace. What do we think about that opening and Georgiou being sort of like Rick in Rick's Cabaret in Casablanca?
I have opinions, but let Isaac answer first. He isn't.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
It is Canto Bight from episode 8. Is a space station, and it looks like a giant lapel.
Or a brooch.
Or a brooch. One of the two.
One of my cardinal sins is don't do something in sci-fi that you can do not in sci-fi. So never mind the cliches. So much of what we saw, set up, character, dilemma, is what you could have done in a non-sci-fi setting. And when that's the case, you're spending millions of dollars on sets and costumes, and you could have done the same thing in 1932 setting, 1960s setting. It doesn't even have to be in space. So yeah, I mean, this, I suppose we will call it an homage, but that whole setup with, there's this guy and, he's a bad player and we don't want to see anyone like him, but we got to work with him here. And then there's, going through the whole dossier thing. How many times have we seen that? And if you're going to do it, give me something cool. it was really, really kind of corny.
Also, it reminded me of, and because, you know, the way they speak, these characters, especially the leads or the who we assume would be the regular cast if this were a series, the way they banter, you know, yes, it's very MCU modern times, but it's also reminds me of the Whedonverse and how his characters were known for being so snarky and witty.
Yes.
But furthermore, the reason I'm bringing that up now is because that setting, because I'm assuming that would have been considered like a central hub. That would be their TARDIS console room that would travel around every week in episodes, and so that's probably why they spent so much on that set if it were actually a series. But it also reminded me, wasn't it an Angel where there was that demon who was like operating that demon speakeasy, and that was also like a place where they would like find out about new gangsters in town or demons and, you know, get information, kind of like Quark's bar. So yeah, it's things like this, the dialogue and like that kind of setting, it almost made me feel like if Whedon made a Star Trek universe series.
I was actually thinking of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I think one of y'all brought that up already.
You know, in future, whenever Sean has brain farts, in my head, like when we're podcasting, in my head, I'm going to imagine that Sean's nanokin has left his body and has gone to go get some more liqueur or spirits. And so then Sean's physical body is just on autopilot. Shut up, Eric. That's stupid. But his nanokin is just off, like playing words with friends, like in the other room. So
yeah.
I remember the other thing. I remember what it was. It was the other movie, or at least a series that had like a bunch of ragtag misfits. Was the recent Borderlands movie.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Excellent.
Wait, did you say Borderlands? Borderlands?
Yeah, Borderlands.
Yeah, that's or Borderlands, as we would say down here, Eric.
Wait, Sean, how do you know that? I mean, have you seen that, or
I played the video game.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there is it's been, what do they have, like 3 of them now, I think?
5, 4 is coming out.
Yes, 4th one's coming soon. Well, 3 in a prequel, another one coming out, 1 in a spin-off
Tales from
universe.
the Borderlands, comic books.
The Wonderland one, the pre-sequel, the sequel, the original.
Wait a minute, is it Jamie Lee Curtis in Borderlands?
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. ...
Oh.
Wait, Sean, did you see the movie?
No, I have not. I was
going to say, why didn't you take me with you? I had no idea you played Borderlands back in the day.
Yeah. Well, no,
I did too.
I didn't play it that much. But I was going to say the trope of the ragtag crew can be carried out. One of y'all mentioned Firefly, or you mentioned Joss Whedon. That's classic. That's a really good example of that.
Mm-hmm.
They tried it in Doctor Who in one episode, the one with David Tennant and Rose. I know I'm narrowing it down. The Satan Pit. It was a double one.
I was thinking about the heist one as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah, the heist, time heist. That's actually a really compelling episode that involves a heist, and but it's done better than this. It's an episode of Doctor Who, and you can't say that for a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And another modern example, I guess, would be like the Rogue One movie.
Yes, that's the
in
other
a
one.
way
Yes.
the Andor series that Sean owns and hasn't watched yet. Except, unlike the movie, for those who haven't seen the series, it feels weird to even group it in with these other things that we've named, because the series of Andor, more so than the movie, feels so much more noir, gritty. Like, it doesn't feel like these kind of jokesters, like, you know, the modern sarcasm, the Whedon talk, the MCU talk.
Yeah.
So it's funny to even group Andor with those, because they don't speak like that. They don't act silly, quote unquote, like that. Mm-hmm. But yet it is still sort of that setup, except it's done. See, that's when you know you've done it right, because Andor is doing it, but it doesn't seem like they're doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, in the positive examples of this, the frame of something we've seen done before, we see, but we're really interested in the characters, right? Their banter is either particularly funny, like from, Firefly Serenity or from Guardians of the Galaxy. They're just funny to see them together. Or if it's like Rogue One, we're really pulled into the story and the characters are very well developed. So you can have an archetype of storytelling, these kind of things. But if you're gonna do it, give me some depth, give me something unique, give me something different.
Absolutely.
And they did not.
And what's sad is that usually the other Star Trek franchises, they're completely the opposite.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. They're very character driven. Some people would say they're a little bit slow, but they are, connected with broader themes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
they're trying to make modern Trek a bit faster, and this contemporary bent. I guess they're trying to reach broader audiences, which is ironic, seeing as the audiences are finally growing towards what classic Trek is. But let that go. Their idea is to try to make it more approachable to a broader audience, but they're missing out on the stuff that really makes Trek exciting and really is what brought the fans there in the first place. So they're compromising too much.
I just love listening to this because this is what I would want to hear if I was listening to a Star Trek podcast, another one on this subject, because a lot of things that you guys have brought up I hadn't really thought about as it pertained to this until now. But also I want to ask, first I'll ask the two younger Trek fans in the room, and then 'cause I think Carl may know the answer, I'm not sure. Do you guys have any idea when this takes place in Star Trek? In the Star Trek universe?
350 years from now.
Okay, so I'm assuming at least both of you, Isaac and Sean, more or less know there's the TOS era with, young Kirk, the original. And then, of course, there's TNG. So we'll just use those 2 frame points. Do you guys have any idea where this takes place? Like before or after either of those points? Or do you have any guesses?
Well, it should take long after them because obviously Section 31 is somewhat of an illegal rebel, dark cloak and dagger type organization. So I think that the Federation is fairly elderly by now. I can't speak for things like Discovery. Well, obviously not, because that or the one with Scott Bakula, Enterprise. But I get the impression that this takes place long after both TOS, as you say, Eric, and Next Generation. TNG, sorry.
Okay.
That's what I suspect, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Isaac, what do you think?
Well, I'll give you 2 answers. The first one is they set a star date. Was it like 12:30 something?
They did, but that can be confusing. But go on.
My second answer is I treated this. I went into. I forgot to mention this before. I came into this movie just divorcing it from Star Trek to see if it was just like an all right film on its own.
Mm-hmm,
Like if this was just called Section 31 and I didn't have any idea that this was a Star Trek show, or it was just its own thing, like just to give it the benefit of the doubt. And I'm with Sean on it. It's fine. Like maybe I don't know, like a 2, maybe a 1.5. I'm not really sure.
Out of what?
5.
Okay, yeah.
But I haven't. Don't worry, I haven't landed on that. I'm just saying that's where I am right now.
Mm.
I suspect this is TOS. I suspect this is either season 3 of TOS or we're in Star Trek 3 TOS.
Huh. Interesting. Pull that one out. Star Trek 3. Carl, do you already know the answer of when it takes place?
I do mostly know the answer, and there's one big hint. So you going to do it, or am I going to do it?
Yeah. No, you can do that part.
Okay.
But I'll just say for myself, because I had no flipping clue.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Until 30 minutes before we did this conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I was trying to figure it out without going to the internet while I was watching
Mm-hmm.
it. And so when I was just watching it and I had not consulted the internet or anything, I'm just telling Carl because it won't make sense to you guys. I was going between, in my own head, this is around the same time as early seasons of Discovery, or is it around the time of later seasons of Discovery? Those were my binary choices just on seeing the film without doing any research at all.
Mhm.
And so I thought it had to be one or the other. But Carl, you can deliver the full answer.
Yeah, yeah. And this is tricky for so many reasons. That's a good question that you asked, Eric, because you and I have often discussed the challenges of framing the time of Star Trek based upon the look of stuff in the movie episodes, right? You know, we are trying to reconcile when Star Trek is occurring based upon the look of technology, the look of sets, and we have got original series, next gen, super future Discovery, and the television series to try to. It's really hard just from the visual aesthetic to pick this stuff out.
Here, here.
But they do tell us, they give us one big hint, and that's our character. There is a character in this who is the Starfleet authority as part of the Raggedy Crew. Remember, with the crazy hair, Rachel Garrett. Rachel Garrett turns out is a pretty important character in the history of Star Trek, and so the presence of her in this episode, we know that later on she becomes captain. We know later on she actually becomes captain of the Enterprise. We know later on that she becomes captain of the Enterprise C. So, her presence, if you could not trace other things, there are other little hints, but if you couldn't trace other things, her presence in this is trying to tell us when this stuff is going on. So, this is before Next Generation. This is before Star Trek Next Generation. That's the quickest answer. So, that's what I got.
Yeah. And Carl's right. And see, I had heard rumblings about her character, like just before this debuted. I had heard rumblings of a young version of her character, but I completely forgot that by the time I started watching this. So that was completely lost on me as a reference. But yes, assuming it is her, well, it is her. That would place this approximately 35 years after Star Trek 6 and approximately 40 years before the premiere episode of TNG. So almost right in the middle of that space there. And what's funny about having that reference, like, because Carl said, you know, that'd be a hint if you were aware of that knowledge going in that Carl said. But the thing is, the people who would be most aware of that, or that would have meaning for, would be primarily big time fans of TNG.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't think that's who the audience of this was.
Yeah.
So the big tell, because if you were just loving Discovery, the mention of Lieutenant Garrett, that doesn't mean anything to you at all.
Nope.
So it's a weird reference. And then when I was trying to search out the answer myself 30 minutes before airtime, there was a little bit of debate on Reddit because, you know, like Isaac said, they give the star date, but what's so confusing about the star date is if you just take it on face value, like the number of digits and it starts with a 1, that would place it right before the second pilot of TOS. So that's what some people thought, is that, oh, this is like, you know, around that time, like early TOS time. But then as other fans pointed out on Reddit, yeah, but the numbering system of star dates in TOS was nonsensical. It didn't make any sense. There was no rhyme or reason to it. So there's no reason why we should go by that convention. And therefore, someone said, if you go by the TNG Stardate convention and you roll it backwards, because we've never had a number that small, then it would line up with Garrett and her timeline, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, great nerd war I got to peer into. on that subject.
Yeah, I can't trust the star dates, and I have to use canon order to hold things together because, again, not to spoil too much else, but even Rachel Garrett has a timey-wimey thing that happens. So even that,
Yes,
just
yes.
further scrambles things. So this is the
Right.
best that we can do.
And even the guy who's the original leader before Georgios comes
Yep.
in, Sahar, I guess his character's name is, and he was from another time
Yeah.
frame as well. Whoa! Oh, and maybe some of those Earth colloquialisms came from him, maybe, since he's a man of another time.
Okay, we'll take it. I have always appreciated the aspirational far future vision of Star Trek. And in the 60s when we were watching or when Star Trek first came out, imagining the future of talking computers and portable communications devices, and phasing laser weapons. It was fun to see the future from the 60s. And then in the 80s, when the next generation came along, this idea of, tablet computers and, communications devices that you could just tap, that were small enough to wear and all that seeing glimpses of the future as part of Star Trek was always really exciting. So to me, the idea that Star Trek should be moving forward in time has been an important part of its attraction to me because I like to see what the future is going to bring, what the future is coming. How are we going to use this kind of stuff? After Voyager, Star Trek decided to go back in time with Enterprise to go back before the original series. Now, I never liked that as an idea because that means that the whole time we're watching the show, all of the technology that is supposed to be in the future is future technology that is retro to the future that we have seen. The fun of the aspirational future that we were going to see that science fiction normally brings isn't there because not only is it not the future, it is pre-60s estimations of what the future is. So I've got to sit there watching the spaceship with grappling hooks, trying to grab other things. And I'm going, this is killing me. This is killing me. Now, my long tirade about this is that, why I believe Star Trek should be aspirational and should be set in the future. And modern Trek, they keep doing weird stuff with the time. They keep going to these pocket back times that just makes everything more complicated in terms of maintaining the series. I don't know why they're doing this. I don't know why they keep looping back like this because, the only one place that makes sense is Strange New Worlds because the characters are so powerful. And that is truly the 5-year mission of, before Kirk. That's a very interesting and historically exciting time to explore. There's a lot of stuff in there that we've got questions about and we're curious about. Yeah. But all of this other hopscotched around and looping back and forth, it really just messes with you because, I want to see the future technology and I want it to be something set in the future. They cannot maintain a retro future tech long enough to hold a lot of people's interests. That's a problem.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I don't even want to go down this bunny hole right now because I want to get to other things, but I have so much to say about that. My short version without going down the bunny hole, I have theories as to why they keep doing this, but I'm not going to explore that right now for time reasons. The other thing, reflecting on that, is because they keep playing hopscotch and jumping around in a weird way. Because if there's so many ways and so many times that we travel through time in Star Trek, forward and backward, especially in the more recent things, then it sort of makes the universe start to feel like Doctor Who, because it makes Star Trek timey-wimey, and if they're always popping out in different centuries and decades, then the only thing that seems constant is your main like those in the TARDIS. So it's almost like we're in a Star Trek TARDIS and we just pop out at different times as viewers. So everything feels like it's that TARDIS era, whatever the console is of the moment. And then whatever's the actual production design of the story itself, it almost feels throwaway, like Doctor Who. Like, it doesn't matter if it's the 33rd century or the 51st century. It doesn't matter when you're watching Doctor Who. And that's essentially what's happening to Star Trek now, because they jump around so frequently that you don't feel like you need to know when it actually takes place.
That would be acceptable, except the TARDIS keeps changing. That's a problem.
Right. You're right. Over time. And yeah, and also the last thing I wanted to say, because I could go down this bunny hole, but I'm not. But Carl, it sounded like you listened to the discussion that me and Isaac just had on the previous episode on the feed to this last week's episode when we were discussing Enterprise, because we discussed that subject quite a bit.
Oh, I missed it. But all right, go on.
He was there all along. I knew you were listening in.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I want to steer us into another direction because we're already going long and there's still a few more things to suss out. And so finally, let's focus on the whodunit section of the story. What did y'all think about that section of there's a mole, who did it?
Sean, yeah, this is your whole, this is your shtick.
He wants me to answer that question.
I want everyone to answer that question.
Okay, this is the thing. I think I love a whodunit. Okay, just give me, a bunch of people stranded somewhere. One of them is a killer or a traitor. Maybe they'll start dying one by one. That's fine. But there's a fine line sometimes between it being a slasher and then it being a mystery. The Scream series, which is a great series, is really good at that. There was no clues that would lead us to believe that particular person was the traitor, except for the weird shit that Michelle Yeoh thought at the last minute, which I can't remember what it was. I didn't like it. I can't.
What's his name was acting weird.
He was acting weird. Yeah, that's not gonna work.
The cyborg?
No. The Vulcan.
Vulcan, air quotes.
Yeah, and when Michelle Yeoh is having her thinking moment, her just one more thing, they show him with his very short, unanimated answers that were very easy to miss early.
That's not a good clue. That's not a real clue. I mean, you give me some concrete evidence, like he knows a piece of knowledge that he wouldn't have known about unless he was the murderer. One thing that I found interesting is that the technology was so advanced that they were able to detect DNA on this and that. They were able to find DNA on Garrett. And I thought, God damn, you can't be Columbo on Star Trek. There's just, you can't be a murderer on Columbo, I should say. You're going to get fucking caught by just within 5 minutes. That kind of annoys me, but whatever. Yeah, and the whodunit subplot was really secondary to the action and all that. I would really, really love to see a whodunit that is set in space, like a real, true Knives Out type whodunit. And the closest I've seen is there was one with Christian Slater back in the day, and I can't remember the name of it.
What was that?
Star Trek 6.
No.
Oh yeah, that's
true. It literally was a whodunit, and it had Christian Slater in it. It was Star Trek 6. You're talking about.
That's true. What other sci-fi thing was he in besides that?
I don't know. I don't really. I don't have my finger to the pulse of Christian Slater's career. It's not a thing. As the camera pulls back, And there's pictures of Christian Slater pasted all over the wall with his eyes cut out in like red string. Ding, ding, ding.
I still think he's Jack Nicklaus, his estranged son. Isaac, thoughts on the whodunit?
It felt secondary to me. It felt very lighthearted. And like, were there two whodunits? I mean, I guess there was the murder mystery, and then there was who is this mysterious assailant that's trying to go after the MacGuffin, the bomb, whatever they call it, the godsend.
Oh yeah. There's the second MacGuffin. We'll talk about that next.
Because there was two of them.
The assailant / mole.
I think it was either done to like, ultimately, like going back to the Mission Impossible thing. I just feel like it was there as like almost a Mexican shootout or standoff, excuse me, or one of those things where
I love that phrase. I haven't heard that in 15 years. I love it. I'm not being sarcastic.
If that's politically incorrect, I'm sorry, but just where everybody has like their guns pointed at each other, like if that's the case, that what they wanted to, it's either they're vamping for time or they just needed, I don't know, our characters to disagree with each other. I'm not really too sure, in at least in that setting. And yeah, again, it kind of felt like just surface level. Oh well, we need a whodunit. And I agree with Sean. I don't think it was structured properly. Like, oh, we got him. Like, it was no Butler this time.
I think the Christian Slater movie that Sean was alluding to, maybe it was something you did on Shit We Watch on Netflix.
No, because I liked it.
Because this is a movie I've never heard of from 2013 called Stranded, and it sounds like
that's not it.
That's not it.
That's not it. No, It's like And Then There Were None, but like Christian Slater heads a like team of like Navy people in the future, and then they land on like a deserted planet, or it's like an office building or something, and then they start to get killed one by one because they have to like pass all these tests, and they realize that one of them is actually the killer, and there's like elements to Saw in it, and also And Then There Were None. And that's the only off the top of my head, like mainstream movie I can think of that was a whodunit set in space.
Oh, and it may not be exactly to your order, but maybe we'll have something more to talk about in the fall as it pertains to Star Trek. That remains to be seen. But anyway.
Oh no, I know what you're talking about because I saw the Our Host is Dead. Yeah, I saw that shit. Yeah.
I haven't even watched that yet, but okay. But real quick, I want to say, and then I'll let Carl respond to the whodunit. I was trying to be sneaky, so I didn't expect this. You know, obviously, it's not the whole episode. It's like, sort of like this middle segment. I was surprised that it was even happening, and it actually interested me more than what I had seen up to that point in the movie. So I was like, okay, I'll play along. I'll play along. And as a participant, as a viewer, an active participant, I was trying to think 3D chess for some reason, and I was convinced as soon as they were like, who did it? Like, what happened? How did he die? And I was doing the math in my head, you know, the thing you do in the murder mystery game, like who was here, who was not here, you know, who has an alibi, yada, yada, yada. I was convinced, like within the first 30 seconds, it was the Deltan. I thought for sure it was the Deltan. I thought for sure we would discover, as if it was like a reveal in a Harry Potter movie, that the Deltan was working with the MacGuffin person the whole time, and that they had set up that the MacGuffin person was going to seem to unalive her, but it was actually like she got beamed out or something. And so I thought for sure she was going to be the mole, and these remaining characters would all be going at each other, and it would be like, dun, 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 the Deltan's still alive. And I thought, oh, that's perfect. That makes sense to me, especially because she was so likable and easy on the eyes. It's like she was a mole from the very beginning. And then when that didn't happen, I was like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I playing 3D chess on a checkerboard? So that's what happened to me.
That would have been an interesting and an acceptable twist. You know, I'm not a huge fan of whodunits anyhow.
Sean, cover your ears.
Wow.
Oh my goodness, my stars!
Yeah.
Clutch my pearls.
I mean, again, one of the main reasons I'm a fan of science fiction is because you can't really tell where the story is going to go from the start. You've got literally all space, time, the universe to explore from the beginning of your episode. So stories that terminate in multiple choice bother me. If it's the pie maker, the butler, or the chef, I'm like, it's one of those three. Why it's too small. I need more range in the story for me personally. So to throw that in on top of the other stuff, not a fan. And like Eric was saying, if they had brought the Deltan back, if it had been something out of the frame, I think that would have, to me, been a bit more interesting. No, they kept it squarely in the frame and then didn't really even explain it very well. So, I wasn't a fan.
Fair enough.
Can I add something as well? I just realized maybe this is like I don't know how often they do this in some of the new Trek, as I'm calling it, and new metal, but or at least under Kurtzman's supervision. Was it? Does he do this often in the other television series that he produces, or at least runs?
Are you talking about Whodunit?
Not Whodunit, sorry, but there was a point where I think it was either the Vulcan or it was the guy in the suit, not the cyborg, but the mysterious masked man, where they get teleported, and I'm like, isn't that what happened in Star Trek Into Darkness?
I don't remember.
When you said you mean teleported, like as the ship was crashing? What?
No, it was like either the ship was crashing or they just got beamed out, and I was like, oh, isn't that the same thing that happened with Khan in kind of the beginning of Into Darkness, where he assaults all those admirals having that meeting, and then he gets teleported to Cronus?
Well, they do. Transporting is pretty convenient. It comes up in convenient ways in Trek. But
but Abrams during those movies, the first and the second, he took it to crazy
extremes. He sure did.
Yeah, it was kind of like the hyperspace event that happened in the Star Wars movie I don't want to name. It's almost world breaking.
What we're getting at is transporters are supposed to have a range. They're supposed to have certain kinds of limitations, and we've gotten very used to those limited usage of transporter ranges and rules. And when Abrams came in, I mean, he was beaming people to other star systems, and it was ridiculous. So, they were convenient enough before, and then he just really took it to the next level. So, if you mean that they used the transporter in an extra convenient way, they have been more disciplined at that than we saw here.
Oh, and I wanted to add one more thing on the Whodunit before we move to the next and possibly final thing to talk about. But so when I was looking into who actually wrote this episode or movie, whatever you want to call it, let's see. Oh, I can't even read my own writing. Is it Craig Sweeney? And I looked into their IMDb and previous work, and then things started to make some more sense to me about this movie, because even though we keep mentioning Kurtzman's name, he wasn't the actual, boots on the ground, guiding this or anything. This wasn't his brainchild necessarily, even though he greenlit it. But Craig Sweeney had a lot of work in previous television as a showrunner / executive producer, co-executive producer, creator, and writer on many episodes from shows people have heard of. Let's see, he did a lot of those various jobs I just said on the show The 4400, if anyone saw that. I know some of us on SFTL have watched that back in the day. He did a fair amount of the series Medium. He did the television series version of Limitless. And then what I found most interesting was he filled those roles on the CBS series Elementary, which was sort of like the American Sherlock.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know this, but I was wondering this because at the time that I was watching this on Paramount Plus, they were showing ads for a new Paramount series or maybe CBS series, Watson. He, in fact, did both Elementary and the new Dr. Watson series that has just come out now, where I've only seen the trailer because I was watching Section 31. Apparently, in the Watson series, Sherlock has died, and so now this is like the solo adventures of Watson. So for some reason, looking at those things in the IMDb, not only about the whodunit, but for some reason that just framed this story more for me. And I could just only imagine if there was a continuing like season of this. And I'm not saying it'd be good, I'm not saying it'd be bad, but it would be something.
I'm with all that background, then why wasn't the whodunit more nuanced?
Well, I would only, and I'm not here to defend this Section 31, but I'm only to think that necessarily wouldn't. It was a time filler. It was almost like a micro bottle episode in the middle of this quote unquote movie. Just that little sequence.
Okay.
But because we're going longer than I ever would have dreamed on this movie, we'll just finally talk about, yes, the MacGuffin and the reveal of who is the mastermind behind this. And I'll let everyone speak. I'll just say, though, because 2/3 of you haven't seen it, not anything directly tied to this, but indirectly, it just reminded me of something they did in Discovery a lot with the MacGuffin antagonist in general, the masked unknown person. That does feel to me like something they've done quite a bit in some of the modern Trek. But anyway, other people's thoughts on the ultimate reveal and where this was all leading.
I want to rate it.
That's coming next after we talk about the final reveal and who was going after this device. And especially for you other two besides Carl, I mean, they explain it, but did you guys get the idea that Giorgio was originally from the Mirror Universe?
No.
Because that's another thing. Even though it's explained in some of the exposition, I still feel like it would easily fly over the heads of people who are unfamiliar with Discovery or even regular Star Trek Mirror Universe. It could fly over.
I'm going to be perfectly frank here, Eric. Because the movie didn't really interest me that much, even though I didn't think it sucked, there's no way I'm interested in the lore behind these characters, the lore that this movie didn't already tell me. You know what I mean?
No, I get it. Yeah, that's 100% fair. I mean, that's the answer I'd expect. Isaac, any thoughts on that?
So, Discovery Season 1, Episode 1, it takes place roughly how long before TOS?
What would you say, Carl? About 10 or 12 years?
I guess. Yeah, I got to look it up. I don't remember. But
10 or 12 years before TOS. And we're talking about Kirk on TOS, not Ike on TOS. But yes.
Right.
Not yet, at least. Before they remake it. Now, if I can also ask, because I have seen, I think it was called Mirror Mirror, or whatever that original TOS episode was called. The timeline within the Mirror Universe and then the Prime Universe, are they linked? So there's always like no matter what's happening, it's the same star date, or are they reversed, or do you know what I mean?
Carl, you can answer.
Yeah. The quick answer is yes.
With an asterisk.
Yes.
So, pardon me for being crude. How come Giorgio wasn't half naked? Because I have seen Mirror Mirror, and they are all half naked in that other universe.
Sir.
And so I am confused as to why that wasn't a good tell of that it was the Mirror Universe.
I find that question rude and crude. I will not have this.
Also.
It is. And how come San didn't have a goatee?
Okay, so these are good questions. The simplest answer I will say is we get to see the Mirror Universe in Discovery, they have a slightly different take on wardrobe from the Mirror Universe crew than they did in the original series.
Okay, well that's not canon. It's not canon.
So that's the quickest answer I got for you on that.
It's okay, but it's not canon.
The other slight accent I will additionally add is she's royalty, so she's got it buttoned up a little more. That's the other thing too.
Noted. Okay. Well, anyway, this isn't canon. None of this is canon. Anyway.
Oh, and just to clarify, I'm not sure if you just said this in your question, Isaac, because it almost sounded like you were saying or asking as if this, what we were watching, was taking place in the Mirror Universe. No, this is not supposed to be taking place in the Mirror Universe, the bulk of this movie, but it is where she originally came from. Yeah. In the very beginning, like the preamble part, yes, Mirror Universe, but the bulk of the story was quote unquote Prime.
Looking at some of the subtitles, I noticed they said Federation. There is clearly a difference between the Federation and the Empire. So
yeah.
Obviously, we are in the Federation, and they said the Terran Empire. That's an obvious tell right there. But
no, it is. But again, I felt like people who are more casual Star Trek fans in general, that could just fly over their head, like the
pardon me for being a little bit like hyperbolic there, but it was only just in the case of this is just my knowledge of how this universe works.
No, that was perfect.
And I wish this whole like Discovery and Strange New Worlds, they were all in the Kelvin timeline, because I think that would make a lot more sense. Or Star Trek was, or all this was in the future, or we can do that stuff. But anyways, apologies.
I softly agree with that as well.
Well, I can tell you why the Terran civilization, the Terran Empire, failed. It is because they make windmills out of nets. That bothered me. I sit there watching a windmill spin, and it's made of net. I'm going, well, why? What? Incidentally, they use the same netting as their roofing material.
Well, you see, it's a Class D planet. It has a much denser.
Ain't no way. There were 3 threads on that windmill. 3 threads hanging loose on it, and not even blowing in the wind. I was disgusted.
No, that's so funny. I didn't even think about.
Look at the windmill, and then look at they're in their huts, and then look at the ceiling of their huts. It's made of net. I'm like, this is just the stupidest thing I've ever seen. But it's wonderful for lighting, mind you. So for cinematography standpoint, it's fantastic. Any rain, useless for that.
I'm not a big fan of the cinematography in this.
No.
That pig didn't fare well. The one who made his house out of a net.
Nope.
No wonder I don't hear about him in the 3 Little Pigs.
Yeah, they wrote him out.
Yeah.
He got eaten first.
Did anybody else have any thoughts on the big reveal? And now we know.
Well, okay, so I don't know. Maybe I'd have to watch it again. I doubt I would, but I don't know. I get the drama of that was it actually reminded me of. What is it? The Watchmen, the Kingsman movie, where kind of towards the end, the secret agents are supposed to like kill the dog or whatever.
Yes.
And obviously the main protagonist couldn't do it because he has a heart of gold. But the other person could. But it was all like a what the hey is it? Which then led me to believe, it's that thing from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. What's it called? The no-win scenario. Thank you very much. The no-win scenario where you're not supposed to be able to win anyways. It's just a test of like, okay, well, how can you figure out how to survive by the end? And in this case, Kirk cheated. Anyway, that's Star Trek II. But this one, of course, I was like, yeah, he was the one that couldn't go through it because, he has compassion and mercy. And whereas Philippa, she's ruthless and I guess had a nice meal with her family before they were all poisoned by the meal itself. And I assume that was the same poison that San was, I guess, ingesting over the years, kind of like Wesley from Princess Bride.
Yes, I thought of that as well.
Oh, wow.
Yes, that's what I gathered from that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just forgot about that connection.
Nice.
It's so cool. That was a deep pull. And Carl, did you have any cares for the end, or were you just watching this because it was homework. Not even for the podcast, but just as a Star Trek fan.
Yeah, I was watching it for completeness. I was hoping that we were going to see some of the big things that that they focused on in Discovery. I was really surprised that we didn't. So it's an interesting exercise.
All right. Yeah, I think we got most of the main points covered.
Eric, I have one more thing. Unless Sean, do you have anything else?
Oh, okay. Columbo.
I've got nothing. No.
Okay. Carl, anything else left on the table for you?
Nah, I'm good.
Okay. The action scenes, or whatever you want to call that stuff. Wow. Yeah. What in the hay is it? I wonder if this is going to be the new thing going forward, or it was like a thing for time. I assume, I don't know who the stunt coordinator was on this production, but I do wonder if this is the new way we're going with the big compromise, of course, which is in place of 52 different cuts of a fight scene instead of taken. We're instead going to do snap zooms or whatever it is.
That zoom was ridiculous.
Take a shot, you regulation listeners and comment leavers, ladies and gentlemen, between unaffiliated. Every time you see a snap zoom happen in a fight scene, or even like there's only one. I think there was like not one, but there's like a few on like one hand that you could consider like, okay, that's fine. Whenever they like snap zoom to a ship, I was like, okay, that's fine. But it just felt like it was artificial. Every time like Caleb mentions, oh, the slow motion feels like it was after the fact. It wasn't shot in slow motion. They just did it like in editing.
I'm sure they did it in digital post.
This was clearly editing, and I mean, okay, the fight scenes were nothing to write home about. They weren't great. Nothing on the stunt coordinators, but I was not impressed with them whatsoever. And the snap zooms was new, I suppose, but also just like, all right, you're trying to cover up the fact that your stunt coordinator or coordination is not the greatest. But anyway.
I'm so sorry. You mentioned Kingsman, and I'm assuming you're thinking of the same fight scene that I'm thinking of in the church.
No, I was only referring to Kingsman with the scene with the dogs when they're like tested to like shoot the dogs. I actually don't like that scene in the church. It's actually not great.
Really?
I think it's a bad. Well, I overall didn't like that movie, and the fight scene just felt kind of artificial to me. And I mean, these ones they were trying, but I'm like, it's kind of like CW levels of action scenes. So I'll pass on that.
I understand this. Okay. All right. I understand. All right.
I only have a quick answer to Isaac bringing this up, and that is, I think because I watched most of Discovery, and because you also said, is this where we're going? Like in Star Trek or whatever. Because I've watched most of Discovery, and I believe it's been a long time since I watched it, and I only watched it once, but the early seasons of Picard, not the final season, but the earlier seasons, there was so much of this infused little action, kind of like what was established in the Kelvin movies at times, like a continuation of that, of actionifying Star Trek. Because I'd seen those things already on Paramount Plus, I've grown numb to it. So when it was happening in this, it was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. But I could imagine if one had never seen Discovery or early seasons of Picard, yeah, I would imagine that'd be super jarring. It's just I can't put myself back into that space because I'm already numb to it. But that's my answer there.
I'm going to simply say I 100% agree. They were compromising on details and complexity of fight scenes by using the absurd zooms and ridiculous camera shaking. It was both of those effects that they were overlaying on what would otherwise look like very slow action moves. It was, it was their trick to speed things up. But even compared to Discovery, Discovery shakes the camera. Section 31 does ridiculous zooms. The zooms almost had like a comic timing to them, like 1960s Batman comic timing to it. All it was missing was the BAP and the bow.
That's leagues better than this.
It was, agree. Those are better. But yeah, it felt kind of cheap to me because as a fan of fight scenes, and especially when you've got Michelle Yeoh in there, you would think that they would highlight or they would match her with someone that's got the kind of skills, or at least give her the choreography to highlight what she's very good at. They depended heavily on the camera shaking and they've done camera shaking in modern Trek, but the zooms were extreme in this episode. They did not do the zooms in Discovery. So it is even more absurd than what they were doing in Discovery, which I thought was a little too much. So yeah, this was over the top.
All right. And finally, Sean's favorite part, because it means he's closer to having his brandy and cigar in the side room. What is going to be our unit of measure for Section 31?
For Section 31, our unit of measure is going to be, tell us how many
godsends
out of 5 would you give this?
Oh, wow. That was an
Godsend? No.
Or is it godsends?
Yes.
Godsends? Godsends.
It actually made me stop and think about it when that ridiculous mech character brought that. Like, I was actually going, wait a second. Godsend? I felt like something Moffat or RTD would do in a script.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Okay, great. I guess I'll choose people to go. Isaac.
I've landed on a 1.5 out of 5. It's godsends.
Well, okay. That may be one of the lowest ratings I've ever heard you do on any of the different podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, the most praise I can give this is if you have exhausted, like you are a individual who has every single streaming service out there and you only just do it to fill time, you just watch this while you're doing your chores, your white noise in the background. That's all I can recommend it to as.
Okay.
Other than that, maybe you'll get some enjoyment, but I would not recommend this as a fan of Star Trek. I would just recommend this just as a B movie that is unaffiliated with Star Trek, and it's just called Section 31.
And Sean.
I'm pretty much in agreement with Isaac, but I would give it a 2.5, which is, of course, average as vanilla. It tries a little bit. It's competently acted. But aside from people, as Isaac said, people who are Star Trek completists, I don't think, it's worth anybody's time. It's not, there's nothing in this that stands out at all. So that's how I am.
And Carl.
I'm going to give it a 2 godsends, only for Trek completeness, even though I completely agree. There's nothing about it that stands out. Doesn't really seem to align with the other Trek that we know, even Discovery. But I'm giving it a 2.
All right. And maybe it's my contrarian day. And side note, disclaimer, no one hang this around my neck going forward. This is not another Skyline or Exorcist 2 or anything like that. I don't want people to be bringing this up 5-8 years from now. And when I say anyone, I mean those who I regularly podcast with. I'm going to actually give this a soft 3. God's Ends. I mean, if I was being more realistic, perhaps a 2.5, but I'm just going to be generous and give it a soft 3. And the reason I'm giving it a soft 3, it's almost like I'm cheating on a curve here because, I already knew the internet, the Star Trek net, Star Trek tube was gonna melt down before this even released. I knew that going in. It could go no other way. And so I had the lowest possible expectations a person could have going into it. And I watched it, and I was, not very engaged at the beginning. And then I just, okay, fine, whatever. And the reason I'm giving it a soft 3 is because I did not outright hate it. And because I'm judging on this adjusted curve, because I didn't outright hate it, I thought that was a little win for this little movie, a little thumbs up. Also, because it felt so unlike any other Trek, including Discovery, which that's not necessarily a bad thing, but anyway, because it felt so unlike any Trek, it just felt like a random, crap we watched on Netflix type film. And in the last couple years, I have watched a lot of direct-to-streaming micro-budget sci-fi movies on especially Netflix and especially Prime. And because I've watched so many and I just eat these up like they're junk food, if I completely divorced this of anything Trek and just watched it and it had no association, they weren't saying Starfleet or Terra or anything like that, this was better than most throwaway, never heard of, never see again streaming movies. It was a lot better in certain ways. So divorcing of Star Trek, I can give this a soft 3 in terms of just generic streaming sci-fi. That's how I justify it. If I was to put my Trek cap on and my Vulcan ears, then that would be a whole different discussion. But I don't feel like I have to do that for Section 31.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, and one day I will probably buy the physical. I know there's a physical Blu-ray. I think there's going to be a physical 4K. I will buy it to complete the shelf. So yeah, and there we go. And so yeah, I was just glad I didn't hate it. And everyone knows I'm no fan of Discovery, but this was just no harm, no foul for me. No goodness either, but no harm, no foul. Oh, and I'll just say, because I forget the name of the race, but the black and white, that got a small rise out of me, metaphorically. That was something I never, ever thought I'd see again in Star Trek. All right. So there you go. The first time we've discussed a movie on this podcast. And I strongly suspect not the last at all. We have some more Star Trek movies to discuss. And I'm assuming everyone here likes Star Trek 5 more than Section 31. But we'll have to find that out another day. And until then, closing out the show today, this is Eric.
This is Carl.
This is Sean.
And this is Red Shirt Isaac at your service.
And until next time,
may the wind be at your backs.
Beware Romulans bearing gifts.
Be at your backs.
May you blow wind out your back.
Wow.
I mean,
crispy, flaky
I'll let
crust,
Caleb choose his choice, but it's may the wind be at our backs.
Oh, excuse me.
I have told you before, you probably thought I said it with a sarcastic tone, that I would pod anything that any of you guys want to do as long as I'm just getting invited. Obviously, I'm not going to produce a show, but I would show up for anything and do the homework. And I've said that so many times, but people must think I'm sarcastic when I say it, because I say it for everything.
Okay. I'm gonna tuck that away.
That's what RuPaul said.
Appreciate the enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.